Let me start with a simple truth. The world does not reward weakness. It may comfort it, sympathize with it, and even understand it, but it does not reward it. If you want to lead, to create, to impact, to leave a mark, you cannot afford to remain weak. When I say stop being weak, I'm not talking about your ability to lift weights or run miles. I'm talking about your ability to stand your ground, to make hard decisions, to delay gratification, and to walk through adversity without losing yourself. You see, the problem isn't that people are weak. It's that we're being taught to stay weak. We're trained to avoid discomfort. We're encouraged to seek safety, security. We're told that life should be balanced and easy. But leadership, growth, purpose, these live on the other side of struggle. The call to become a monster isn't about becoming dangerous to others. It's about becoming dangerous to your own excuses. It's about being so disciplined that your own fears start fearing you. Becoming a monster means building a mindset that is non-negotiable when it comes to integrity, goals, values, and direction. Weakness, on the other hand, is not a starting point, it's a habit. It shows up when we say yes to things that don't align with who we want to be. It shows up when we let others define our worth. It thrives in environments where the standard is survival, not excellence. And it becomes invisible when everyone around you is also playing small. So how do we break this? You stop treating emotions as dictators and start treating them as messengers. Emotions are real, but they're not always right. Fear tells you to stay safe. Courage tells you to move anyway. Anxiety warns you of failure. Discipline prepares you for it. You can listen, but you don't have to obey. Next, you must build standards. People often mistake goals for standards. Goals are targets you aim at. Standards are the rules you live by regardless of how you feel. A monster doesn't rise to the occasion. They fall back on their standards. If you want to stop being weak, raise your standards so high that even your bad days look better than most people's best days. And let's talk about failure because it's coming. Failure is not your enemy. Comfort is. When you stop fearing failure and start fearing complacency, you've made a massive shift. Weakness is about needing life to be easy. Strength is about choosing what's hard because what's hard builds who you are. Becoming a monster means taking ownership of your story, not blaming the world, not waiting for validation, not comparing your journey. Internal war, you show up into every day, whether it's raining or sunny. You execute when you're tired. You build when you're doubted. You grow even when no one's watching. This is not about arrogance. It's about alignment. Becoming your most powerful self is not a luxury. It's a responsibility because every life you touch, every opportunity you receive, every door you open, it depends on your ability to walk in the fire and not flinch. So if you're tired of being overlooked, underestimated, or feeling stuck, good. That's the signal. That's the call. You don't need more motivation. You need standards, discipline, and a refusal to remain where you are. Because monsters aren't born, they're built through daily decisions, relentless action, and a vision so strong that no weakness can survive in its presence. 5 keynotes of the speech. Weakness is a habit, not an identity. It becomes normalized when we avoid discomfort and settle for mediocrity. Becoming a monster means becoming dangerous to your own excuses, not to others. It's about building an unshakable mindset and discipline. Emotions are real, but not always right. Lies in acting on standards, not on feelings. Failures is not the enemy. Complacency is. Monsters grow through adversity, not in comfort. You are responsible for building your strongest self. It's not a luxury. It's your duty if you want to lead an impact. Weakness is a habit, not an identity. It is not something you are born with or destined to carry for life. It is not a permanent label or a genetic flaw. Weakness is a pattern of choices, subtle, often unnoticed, but cumulative. Over time, these choices shape your character and determine how you face challenges, how you respond to pressure, and how you show up in the world. We tend to see weakness as a fixed trait. I'm just not confident, or I'm not the strong type. But the truth is, those statements are nothing more than repeated decisions to avoid resistance, to remain comfortable, to choose what's easy over what's necessary. No one wakes up weak, but weakness grows when we consistently choose what's familiar over what's effective. It grows every time we silence our own voice to avoid conflict. It expands every time we delay what needs to be done in favor of what feels good right now. It becomes embedded in our daily life when we say yes to distractions, when we procrastinate on difficult conversations, and when we run from discomfort. These actions may seem harmless in the moment, but over time they form a rhythm, a habitual rhythm, that becomes our default way of existing. That rhythm is weakness disguised as a lifestyle. We've been conditioned to believe that weakness is something we either have or don't. We measure ourselves against others, comparing our energy, our discipline, our drive, and concluding we just weren't built like them. But we forget one thing: those who seem strong didn't start that way. They didn't inherit strength, they built it through repetition, through discipline, through conscious refusal to stay small. Their strength is the result of habits that prioritize growth over comfort and purpose over pleasure. The danger of thinking weakness is part of your identity is that it gives you permission to stop trying. It provides a false sense of safety, as if surrendering to weakness is more honest than challenging it. But that mindset traps you. It convinces you that your limits are permanent and that your struggles define your capacity. The truth is, anyone can reverse weakness, but only if they stop believing it's who they are. As long as you wear it like a name tag, you'll never challenge it. But the moment you realize it's a behavior, you gain the power to change it. Every time you say, I'm not motivated, and use that as a reason to delay action, weakness gets reinforced. Every time you say, I don't feel like it, and let that dictate your choices, you're training yourself to obey your least disciplined instincts. The only way to break the cycle is to start doing what strong people do. Whether you feel like it or not, you act with purpose. You build structure. You follow through. You stop negotiating with the part of yourself that prefers ease over growth. It's important to understand that weakness often hides behind logic. It's disguised in rationalizations like, I'll do it tomorrow, I'm too tired, or no's not the right time. It's masked by business, distraction, and even fake productivity. You might feel like you're doing enough, but if your habits aren't building resilience, discipline, and clarity, you're maintaining weakness. Growth doesn't happen by accident. It happens by decision. And decisions must be made daily, especially when they're hard. No one escapes weakness without intention. It doesn't disappear on its own. It only fades when you replace it with habits that require mental and emotional muscle. That means committing to wake up earlier, speak up when it's uncomfortable, confront fears you've avoided, and consistently push against the resistance that tries to keep you average. That's how weakness is dismantled, not through one grand act, but through hundreds of small ones that you repeat day in and day out. Weakness wants to stay unnoticed. It thrives when you're too distracted to reflect. It survives when you call it personality instead of pattern. When you slow down and honestly assess your choices, you start seeing where it hides in the skipped workouts, the unspoken boundaries, the broken promises to yourself. You start recognizing that weakness is not your fate, it's your responsibility. And the moment you treat it as such, you begin to change everything. Becoming a monster means becoming dangerous to your own excuses, not to others. This is often misunderstood. When people hear the phrase, become a monster, they think of aggression, violence, or domination. But that's not what this is about. This kind of a monster is disciplined, principled, and precise. It's about creating a version of yourself so focused, so self-directed that your excuses don't even survive long enough to reach your actions. It's not about becoming harmful to others, becoming immune to the habits and thoughts that have been holding you back. You're not building destruction. You're building indifference to distraction. You're not becoming ruthless toward people. You're becoming ruthless toward your own limitations. We all have excuses. They arrive dressed in logic. I'm too tired today. I'll start next week. What if I fail? These are the whispers that seem reasonable, but underneath them is fear. Underneath is doubt. Underneath is a belief that you're not ready, that you're not good enough, that success belongs to someone else. And if you listen to these excuses often enough, they become your truth. Not because they are true, but because you've repeated them so often they no longer get questioned. Becoming a monster means you stop entertaining these excuses. You confront them head on. You replace them with execution, regardless of how persuasive they seem. The people we admire most, the ones who perform at high levels, the ones who create, lead, and push boundaries, are not magical. They just have a different relationship with excuses. They don't wait for motivation. They don't negotiate with fear. They don't let their inner doubts vote on their future. Instead, they establish a code, a way of operating that isn't dependent on how they feel. And once that code is in place, they protect it like their life depends on it. Because in a way it does. Your potential life, your real life, depends on the discipline you build and the excuses you eliminate. Becoming a monster starts with that mindset. It starts with identifying every excuse that has kept you from taking action and treating it as an enemy. If you constantly say, I'm too tired, then you start training to function while tired. If you always avoid discomfort, then you deliberately seek discomfort and make it your training ground. If your excuse is, I'm not confident enough, then you put yourself in situations where confidence is built through exposure, not waiting. You stop asking for easy paths and start preparing for hard ones. You stop hoping for ideal conditions and start becoming the kind of person who acts regardless of conditions. You won't always feel like it. That's a given. You won't always believe you're ready. That's normal. But if your actions only follow your feelings, you'll never escape mediocrity. Becoming a monster is about reversing that pattern. Your actions come first. Your excuse to get no seat at the table. You build identity through action, not through thinking, not through planning, not through reading motivational quotes. Action. Repeated. Real. Every excuse you give power to becomes part of your identity. It defines your limits. It shapes your reality. But every time you act in spite of an excuse, you chip away at the old version of yourself, the one that stays safe, small, and stuck. That's the transformation. It's not always dramatic. Often it's quiet. You say no to sleeping in. You say yes to another rep. You open your mouth in the meeting, even though your voice shakes. You write the email, make the call, show up to practice, study when you're drained, push when you're uncertain. You do these things not because it's easy, but because the old you wouldn't. That's what becoming a monster looks like. This isn't about being cold or unkind. It's about being exact. It's about knowing what matters and aligning your behavior to match it consistently. You develop a zero tolerance policy for excuses, not because you hate yourself, but because you've finally decided to stop betraying yourself. You realize that every excuse you kill, every time you act without permission from your emotions, you're building something greater than strength. You're building self-respect. You're becoming someone your past self would be in awe of. That's the monster you're after. And that version of you isn't feared by others. It's feared by everything that once controlled you. Emotions are real, but not always right. That's a hard truth many people struggle to accept because emotions feel so personal, so urgent, so true in the moment. When fear creeps in, it feels justified. When doubt speaks, it sounds like wisdom. When anger erupts, it seems righteous. But here's the challenge. If you treat emotions as instructions rather than information, they will run your life. They will direct your choices, your habits, your identity, and slowly you'll realize that you're living reactively, not intentionally. You're being driven by how you feel, not by what you value, and that is a recipe for stagnation, frustration, and regret. Every day, your emotions are going to give you reasons not to do the hard thing. They'll tell you it's okay to skip the workout, to postpone the task, to avoid the conversation, to not show up fully. If you listen, they will win, not because they are stronger than you, but because you gave them authority they don't deserve. Emotions can inform you, but they should never govern you. Just because fear shows up doesn't mean there's danger. Just because sadness appears doesn't mean you're broken. Just because you feel unmotivated doesn't mean you're incapable. The key is learning to observe your emotions without automatically obeying them. Strength begins the moment you stop needing your emotions to agree with your goals. Imagine if a builder only worked on the days he felt energized. Imagine if a doctor only showed up when she felt confident. Imagine if a parent only cared for their child when they felt joyful. It sounds ridiculous because it is, but that's exactly how many of us treat our dreams and commitments. We wait for the right feeling to act. We think, when I feel ready, I'll begin. That day rarely comes. If anything, the longer you wait for the right feeling, the further your goals move from your reach. The most successful and consistent people you know are not emotionless. They're emotionally aware. They recognize the voice of self-doubt. They feel the sting of failure. They face fear, but they act anyway. They've trained themselves to process their emotions without becoming a slave to them. That's emotional maturity. It's not about being stoic or robotic. It's about refusing to let temporary feelings sabotage long-term direction. You can be afraid and still act with courage. You can be uncertain and still take the next step. You can be hurt and still show up with integrity. People often misunderstand strength. They think it's about being emotionally detached. But true strength is the ability to carry your emotions without letting them steer. It's the ability to say, I feel this, but I choose this. That space between what you feel and what you do is where your power lies. Most people don't know how to find that space because they've never practiced it. They've let emotions become automatic triggers for behavior. You can interrupt that pattern. You can train yourself to pause, to ask, is this emotion guiding me toward who I want to be or away from it? This awareness doesn't happen overnight. It takes work. It takes journaling, reflection, accountability, and brutal honesty. It takes observing your own reactions and questioning them instead of justifying them. It takes developing emotional fitness the same way you develop physical strength. Just like lifting weights, you won't get stronger avoiding the resistance. You get stronger by meeting it, pushing against it, and coming out on the other side with more control than you had before. The world will test you. Life will throw unexpected stress, disappointment, and pressure your way. If you're not emotionally anchored, you'll be swept away by every new feeling. When you understand that emotions are real, but not always right, you gain stability. You don't swing wildly with every high and low. You move with clarity, with consistency, and with conviction. You stop needing to feel like it in order to do it. And that's a shift that turns ordinary effort into unstoppable momentum. Because once you no longer require emotional permission to be who you said you'd be, there's nothing left to stop you. Failure is not the enemy, complacency is. This is one of the most important mindset shifts a person can make if they want to grow, lead, and evolve beyond their current limits. We are conditioned to fear failure. From a young age, we're taught that mistakes are that getting something wrong is shameful, and that falling short means we're not good enough. This conditioning creates an aversion to trying because trying comes with the risk of failing. So instead of reaching higher, we stay in the safe zone. We stay where things are predictable. We choose paths where we already know the outcome, even if those paths lead to mediocrity. But the real danger doesn't lie in falling short. It lies in never pushing far enough to fall in the first place. Complacency is seductive. It lulls you into a sense of satisfaction with just enough. It tells you that stability is better than growth, that comfort is better than challenge. It whispers that since you're doing better than some people, there's no need to do better than yourself. It builds invisible walls around your potential and disguises them as balance. But the truth is, complacency quietly kills excellence. It doesn't make a loud entrance. It doesn't announce itself. It just slowly pulls you into routines that don't stretch you, habits that don't challenge you, and thinking that doesn't inspire you. Over time, you stop evolving. And you might not even notice, because everything still looks fine on the outside. Failure, on the other hand, is loud. It disrupts you. It stings. It exposes your flaws. But in that discomfort is power. In that exposure is information. When you fail, you see what you didn't see before. You learn things you couldn't have learned by playing it safe. You discover blind spots, weak points, and underdeveloped areas. You get humbled, and that humility becomes a foundation for real growth. Every great breakthrough, every leap forward, every significant transformation starts with a moment where someone tried and didn't succeed. But they kept going. They learned. They adjusted. They grew. That's how strength is built. Complacency never teaches you that. It only reinforces what you already know. And while that may feel good in the short term, it guarantees long-term stagnation. What's worse is that complacency can wear the mask of success. You can reach a certain level of achievement and then start coasting. You tell yourself you've earned the right to slow down. But the moment you stop growing, you start decaying, there's no neutral and personal evolution. You're either pushing forward or you're slowly sliding backward, often without realizing it. The people who make real impact in this world are not the ones who avoid failure. They are the ones who pursue goals so big that failure becomes inevitable along the way. They are willing to look foolish. They are willing to start at the bottom. They are willing to fall as long as they fall forward. What they fear isn't failure, it's regret. They know that a failed attempt is painful, but a life of unused potential is unbearable. That's why they keep showing up. That's why they keep swinging even after striking out. They understand that failing doesn't make them weak, quitting does. If you want to build a life of purpose, you must get comfortable with failure. You must become someone who expects resistance, who anticipates setbacks, and who embraces mistakes as part of the process. This isn't about enjoying failure. No one likes to fall. But it's about refusing to be defined by it. Recognizing that failure is just feedback. It's data. It tells you what didn't work so you can find what does. Every time you fail and get back up, you reinforce a deeper layer of resilience. And over time, that resilience becomes part of who you are. Complacency offers you the illusion of peace, but it robs you of growth. It keeps you from discovering how powerful you can actually become. When you choose to challenge complacency, when you choose to risk failure in the pursuit of something better, you start to build momentum. You start to move with intention. You stop playing defense and start playing offense in your own life. And that changes everything, not just in what you do, but in who you are. You are responsible for building your strongest self. It's not something that anyone else can do for you. It's certainly not something that arrives by accident. This is a responsibility, not a suggestion. It's a commitment to the person you could become. And no one else will make that commitment for you. The moment you start looking outside yourself for someone to fix your life, you hand over your power. The world may offer support, mentorship, tools, and even love, but no one is coming to rescue you from the work. The process of becoming your strongest self is internal, personal, and deeply intentional. Many people wait for clarity, permission, the right moment to begin improving themselves, but those moments rarely come. Life does not pause until you feel ready. If you keep waiting for someone to guide you, validate you, or clear the path, you will miss the opportunity to develop the skills, resilience, and grit that come only from walking the path yourself. Responsibility means that you don't blame your past, your parents, your environment, or your circumstances for who you are now. It means you understand that who you become next is entirely up to you. The raw materials of your life may not be fair, but what you do with them is still your responsibility. Building your strongest self doesn't happen when things are convenient. It happens in moments of decision, often when it would be easier to back down. It's when you choose to show up instead of giving in to excuses. It's when you choose discipline over comfort, growth over validation, consistency over intensity. These small, seemingly insignificant decisions compound over time. You don't become strong because of one big breakthrough. You become strong because of daily, quiet choices that no one sees and few will ever applaud. The inner work is unglamorous. There's no applause when you wake up early. Journal through your fears. Stay disciplined in your diet or studies. But these are the acts that create strength. Responsibility also means owning your reactions. Life will test you, people will disappoint you, and obstacles will arise. You cannot control most of what happens around you, but you can always control how you respond. And that response is where your power lies. Weakness reacts, strength responds. Weakness blames, strength takes ownership. The more you train yourself to respond with intention instead of emotion, the more capable you become of navigating challenges without losing your center. Your strongest self is not a fantasy version of you who has no problems. It's the version of you who can face problems without folding. It's the version that remains calm in pressure, kind under stress, focused when things get chaotic. Strength isn't about being better than others. It's about being better than your former self. It's about outgrowing your old excuses, outlasting your old habits, and outworking your former limitations. That's the standard. And holding yourself to that standard isn't about being harsh. It's about being responsible. Because no one is more affected by your failure to grow than you. And no one is more rewarded by your transformation than you. Too often, people search for external success while neglecting internal development. They want results, recognition, and reward, but they don't want the pain, patience, and persistence required to build something lasting. Strength is built in silence, tested in struggle, and revealed in action. If you truly want to build your strongest self, you must be willing to stop lying to yourself, stop settling for temporary relief, and start showing up in ways that scare you. Fear, discomfort, and doubt are not signs to stop. They're signs that you're moving in the right direction. Responsibility is staying the course. Even when those feelings show up, there will always be an easier path: quitting, blaming, distracting, hiding. But those paths all lead to the same place: regret. The harder path, the one filled with effort, discipline, and courage, leads to transformation. Not overnight, not in a straight line, but inevitably. The more you take responsibility, the more you realize how much power you truly have. You don't control everything, but you always control who you choose to become. And if you choose wisely, consistently, and courageously, you will build someone that no circumstance can break. That is your responsibility, and that is your greatest power. The truth is, the world doesn't owe you strength. It won't hand you courage, discipline, or clarity. Those are things you must build. Weakness isn't something to be ashamed of, but it is something to outgrow. And becoming a monster isn't about becoming cold or cruel. It's about becoming so focused, so disciplined, and so resilient that your old patterns of fear, doubt, and excuses can no longer survive. It's about refusing to live a life dictated by comfort, complacency, or emotion. You have the power to rise, not by chance, but by choice. When you take full responsibility for your growth, when you silence your excuses, when you act in spite of fear, when you raise your standards to match your vision, you stop being weak. You stop being weak. You start becoming the kind of person who can carry pressure, walk through adversity, and lead from strength. You become who you were always meant to be. Not by accident, but by design. And that version of you, that is the monster the world needs.